Hello, and we'll be talking about a support from diagnosis through to intervention and support, taking a multidisciplinary team approach in implementing support strategies. Um, I'll just introduce my team. We've worked together for quite a long time as a team of different professionals. Denise and Helen have a wealth of experience working in different schools in both an SEN capacity and as head teachers. And we've brought our skills together, including educational psychology, speech and language therapy, and SEN professionals. So we want to talk to you today about how we've combined those skills so that we have one point of contact for the family. So just to give you some background, first of all, there's evidence that the quality of adaptation and support influences the life chances of individual children. So there are infinite number of individual variables. What works for one individual may not work for another. And that's why all our intervention is based on large-scale research trials and follow-up studies that give us important guidance on the process. So the process is about balancing the aligned interaction with the individual child. And to achieve that, we have to gain individual profile. And that this is achieved through the assessment. But it's not just a diagnosis, it's about gaining that unique profile and combining it with the individual's insights, their perspective, that provides a template for intervention. So the individual's ability to be understood and communicate and have their needs understood underpins their well-being and engagement. And this is facilitating child agency, giving them the power to be understood and to understand others. And the importance of taking that individual perspective, gaining a deeper insight into their views, whether that's through non-verbal or verbal skills. So we use video assessments, including the PROSA, and some of our intervention involved videos such as the PACT. And the advantage is the power of being able to pause and rewind clips on the video and observe micro moments. These are moments that are being missed in the fast pace of normal interaction. And the child's nonverbal cues are very powerful at helping us gain that insight, giving the child voice, representing their thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. So video is an efficient way of implementing the assessment profile. And this may also mean that the young person could be comfortable in their own environment. It's a more representative picture of their interaction. We do, however, use multiple assessments and intervention tools. And this is enhanced by the experience of the professionals who are able to step into the shoes of the young person. And it includes multiple perspectives, so understanding how that individual is presented in their family environment, in their school environment, the views and perspectives of different professionals. So the assessment is flexible, and it may start with this assessment and progress to intervention using the template of the assessment, or vice versa. We may also start with a period of intervention to get a more in-depth insight into the individual and progress to a more formalised assessment. I'll now just give you a testimony which really, I think, exemplifies the service we offer. So this family said they were astounded by the detail and time and effort that was invested, and having the capturing all of the young person that's in a respectful way, that's respecting their wishes, interests, attributes, and having a positive attitude to the valuable contribution that young people can provide, whatever their neurodiverse profile, but understanding the challenges that they meet and their experiences, and putting a great deal of time and thought into the report and producing a report that's truly collaborative with both the individual and the parents. I'll now pass you over to Denise.
So we as Catherine has said, offer a thorough kind of robust assessment process that can go along a journey with a young person, not just at the point of diagnosis, but also along various stages of their development. And it's very common for us to keep long-standing relationships with families who will come back and forth to us over time. We very much focus our offer on efficiency, forward thinking, and very much on pragmatism. We work with young people of all ages, their families, schools, educational settings, and work settings even, but very pragmatically orientated. We are very aware of the resource and time constraints that both schools and settings will have, and therefore we work on a pragmatic kind of mindset, really keeping that at the forefront of our thinking. It's really important when we're working with our young people and older people to establish where they're at from the starting point, to think of them in terms of where they're at in terms of self-esteem, confidence, how they're coping, how they're managing to navigate their social dynamic, how anxious they may feel. Do they feel that they've got skills themselves and strategies? Do they want to build on those? Or do they feel like they don't and that life feels just very overwhelming? And we will get in people coming to us who could be at any point along that journey. So we work on promoting the development of the young person's insight. We want to build their ability to reflect and navigate social situations, friendships, relationships, colleague relationships, and very importantly, to better understand themselves and to be able to communicate their needs. So we are a diagnostic assessors. We do have capacity to provide flexible options, but we are also that continuous journey. We provide, as Catherine said, not just the beginning point of the diagnosis, and quite often that's not where we start anyway. We will start with intervention and see how we get on building that profile. We provide family support, and often that becomes therapeutic because we believe in a whole approach. We don't see anybody in isolation. Nobody functions in isolation, and so we kind of embrace the partners that are willing around, that are families, schools, employees, employers, etc. And we can provide comprehensive assessment that gives insight, and I think quite uniquely, a really broad range of recommendations at the end of that diagnosis, sometimes that's more lengthy than the actual diagnostic assessment itself. And those recommendations are the building blocks then to begin a journey. We see that journey as a developmental journey. It's not everything can be done in one moment, and the expectation for schools and those that have to provide the support is that this can be done in stages. In fact, it can actually populate the kind of assessment and target process that schools use, so they can pick chunks out of the report, use those for their initial targets, fulfill them, and move on from there and take that child or that young person through that journey in a very pragmatic way. So we see our assessment as being very far-reaching and kind of forward-thinking, not just in the moment, fulfilling a diagnostic function. We can support families and schools very pragmatically. We help them navigate SEN processes, which are very lengthy, very time-consuming, and can sometimes feel very overwhelming, not only for parents actually, but for SEN practitioners in schools. So we can provide guidance on how to complete the EHCP process end to end. So by that I mean from the very first establishment of need and working through an assess, plan, do, review process, building data and evidence that then populates a future EHCP application. And then where EHCP can be challenging and local authorities are finding the approval of those processes tricky, then we can support also through mediation and through the tribunal process. We very much value flexibility and responsiveness. No one individual, as Catherine said, is the same, and they're also not the same along their journey. So they very much develop and move forward, and as they do so, this kind of journey of discovery allows us to build our practical support that then reflects the needs that they have as they change and they adapt, and they certainly do as the young person goes on. Next.
Thank you. We wanted to find a way of demonstrating what we actually do through a representation to show how the individual analysis plays out and along the journey that you've just heard about from Denise and Catherine. It's important to apply a very bespoke approach that caters for the individual needs without any stereotype or prior judgment. We want to increase their understanding of themselves, but also the understanding for their family and their school. And that starts with building a trusting relationship where they feel safe and secure to reflect, to build on the insight, which then leads to the ability to be able to process and future adaptation. It's very important that everything is rooted in their perception and feelings, connecting their own real life experience with understanding. So, what that actually means, what has happened, looking at the social autopsy of real life situations, how it's made them feel, how it's made someone respond to that. What could it look like in the future that could really help? And this is what builds the repair strategy. But that strategy is unique. It's looking at it through an autistic lens. It's not somebody suggesting advice of what they think would help. It's facilitating the young person to formulate their own repair strategy, looking at what has worked well in the past, what can I build upon, and how can I build the forward thinking coping strategies for the future. And all the while, as part of this close relationship, it's improving and building resilience. It's maximizing adaptation. It's helping those people around them to truly understand what's underpinning and what small changes could make a very significant difference to their life going forwards. And ultimately, in empowering the young person to take those steps. Thank you. Next slide.
As Helen said, we very much take that personalised perspective, and the first part is building that trusting relationship between ourselves and the young person that we're working with. Taking time to listen to that young person, that isn't always very easy. We begin often by building a means of communication. We can start at the very beginning where somebody actually isn't ready to open up, they're not ready to be able to convey information. And we will facilitate that by using a range of different tools. Sometimes that might be play, playing a game, doing something together that is fun, selecting a topic of personal interest to the young person and focusing totally on that, allowing them just to be able to talk about that topic of interest because that's easy for them. And we will begin from that basis. It's not untypical for us to work with people who are nonverbal and need time to build confidence to be able to communicate verbally, and we will use techniques like whiteboards or just a notebook that passes to and fro, and even sometimes, but less rarely and certainly only short term, we will use somebody, a trusted adult, as a conduit to be able to aid communication for those first steps. So we start very much from where the young person is at. We start from their perspective and what they need, and then very slowly in chunks we'll build that up using various therapeutic methods, as I've said, like play, like using lots and lots of visual tools, feelings, actions, consequence boards, materials out of the Talk About series, problem solution thinking, and then eventually a means to which we can communicate the best, and that's the means that we will stick with. The young person will navigate that. They will take us through that journey in terms of deciding what works best for them in the moment, and we will go along with that. One thing that's very important is we take a very authentic, genuine interest in our individuals, and we are very much looking for ways in which we can guide and support to work with the young individual to take them through something that they may be finding challenging or difficult at the time. And validating them by letting them know that everything that they're experiencing and thinking is completely valid and individual to them, and there are ways that can be used using their own, as Helen said, ways that they've done things in the past that have worked well. We will draw on them, build confidence to know that those are effective tools, and then make gentle suggestions as well that they can choose from themselves to see what works best for them. So it is a continuous journey and a continuous review. Nothing sits still. It's not a planned programme that is inflexible and is predetermined. It is rather an approach that takes the individual at the centre and works from that point. Next.
Following what Denise has said, it's very important that we build the relationship with the whole family. It should be a safe and confidential environment to be able to allow the family to reflect, to validate their journey, and a place where they feel truly understood. Many families come to us feeling very overwhelmed, unsure what to do, and where to go next. They can often find themselves masking themselves in society, lacking the emotional support of validation, which can lead to confusion and self-doubt. Having one point of contact with an experienced professional who can help with this journey, but cross-fertilise with many other professionals across different disciplines of speech and language therapists, educational psychologists, SEN consultants, PAC therapists, alongside school and education settings, enable us to all put our tools together whilst having one continuous contact with the family for many years to come. It's building a relationship of trust and hope for the future, because once a family feels understood and realises how flexible the approach can be, they feel listened to and safe that we understand and can adapt to whatever that might look like going forwards. It's knowing what to do, not just now, but in the future, thinking about each stage, whether it be in 4 weeks' time, 4 months' time, or 4 years' time, because we very much know that the tools that are built for one stage in life may need some review and thinking about what's relevant now as that young person is progressing on to the next stage. And we want to continue to help and support with that reflective process. Next slide.
As we've just mentioned earlier, Catherine mentioned, both Helen and I have been involved in education probably over 5 decades between us both. So we are very much aware of the real constraints and pressures that schools are under. We also know that there is some excellent practice in the sector, some amazing individuals who are real advocates for supporting young people with a whole range of SEN. So our approach to supporting our schools and those teachers that work within them is very realistic. We understand about the time and resource constraints, and we very much aim to be time and resource efficient. We want to see what is working well in schools. We work with our SENCOs and we work with class teachers through observation to see what is working well in the classroom, but then being able to make suggestions for additional tools and approaches. Sometimes those approaches and adaptations are very simple, such as making simple adjustments to language, reducing carrier language, the amount of language that we use in order to convey what we need to do to make that language very, very simple and straightforward, to reinforce that visually. We can use tools such as praise with purpose, where we often give lots of praise to our children. Good boy, well done, that's great. But it doesn't really enhance the understanding of the child of what is great, what have I done, what is it that's good about me. So in order to enhance that emotional literacy, to be able to provide the correct labelling so the child is very clear, so there's no confusion, we say, you've been so patient, that's great waiting. So those kind of adjustments that we can advise our staff with, and feedback that we get is, thanks very much, that's great, that's simple, it doesn't mean any extra work for me, and we're very conscious of that approach. Another thing that I would advise would be when our practitioners are working with children who are feeling overwhelmed, we do have the propensity as teaching staff to move in and say, what's gone on here, and how are you doing, and what's happened? But if we just adjust that slightly and go in with no questions immediately, but rather just some validation, oh, you're upset, oh, that hurts, doesn't it? giving the child then time to move away and to regulate, we will get all the information that we need at a later stage when that child is more able to convey. And if we need to scaffold that further, we can use tools such as comic strip conversations, or we can use a what happened next scenario board, or a feelings, actions, consequences. And this is the kind of guidance practically that we give to school staff. In the classroom, it's very simple to think, oh, we need to put this in place, or we need an extra person, or we need something else. Actually, we can make small adjustments that are going to be very simple to do. Movement breaks don't necessarily mean that we need to have a child running around the classroom every 5 minutes. It means that they become the monitor for handing out the pencils, for giving out the worksheets, for collecting things in. You are incorporating movement breaks in a very pragmatic, simple way. If a child struggles to sit and you've tried all the bands and everything that you need in the world, wobbly cushions and everything, and it doesn't seem to work, then let them stand. Give them a standing desk at the back of the classroom. I have a number of schools that do that and have said that that's been revelationary. It's helped them lots. And it really allows the child to know that it's okay for me to move. I need to move, and standing is fine. Individual reward schemes, often staff will say to me, oh, but we have really good reward schemes in school, Denise, and I know that you do. However, if you work on an individual basis with a high motivational element for that child, you will find that small hit then leads to a bigger activity later on, one that's pre-selected by yourselves as teachers, will work really well. So they'll accumulate those small micro points of praise, working towards a bigger goal at midpoint in the day or at the end of the day, etc. And it's very tangible for the young person to be able to see and feel the reward in the moment, knowing that they're accumulating it. To talk hypothetically in the future about at the end of the day or a week isn't necessarily sufficient to meet that motivational need that our young people will feel. So across this kind of mentality, our staff and our schools that we're working with are working with individuals, but they're also building fantastic practice within the classroom. They are moving towards a broad awareness of understanding, which is then producing a really inclusive, good practice across schools. So we can work at the level of operational level, but we can also guide and support schools and do on the strategic level. So building that inclusive practice and making sure that the policies that are in school very much relate to the pragmatic. We offer training and support to individual classrooms, but we also offer training and support to whole schools. We can do that on a range of topics. But again, if we were going to do a topic, for example, on autism, we would be very much talking in brief about autism itself, but mainly around how those individuals in the room, those staff in the room, are going to be able to support our young people pragmatically in the classroom. As a practitioner myself, that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know how to do it. What are those tools? We can provide for school guidance around the EHC application process as well. How do they meet need? Ensuring that their assess, plan, do process is really robust and has the data that the local authority will need in the cycles that it needs for when either school or parents apply for an EHCP. So we're looking then, by almost going in at an individual level, there's a knock-on effect that creates this global offer, and we can make these adjustments which lead to actually strategic sensitive adjustments, which from an actual monitoring perspective, from a review of school perspective, when there is an inspection, this is all seen as very good practice, a kind of a robust offer that is actually meeting far broader needs of all children and meeting the needs of staff as well, who are often very stretched and find additional work challenging. Next.
We've included Maslow's hierarchy of needs as part of our reflective process, thinking about what do our young people really need. And many families or schools will come to us saying, what can we do? How can we achieve this? And often their goals are quite near the top of the triangle. And what we actually need to think about is each individual layer and not underestimate the importance of the very bottom layer of physiological needs. We often take for granted the importance of food, water, sleep, warmth, and yet for some young people, the ability to have a good sleep, the ability to eat a nutritious meal, the ability to rest and actually relax are not easy things to achieve. And they can all have knock-on effects on their well-being, their health, both mentally and physically. Safety being the next level is paramount. For that young person to feel safe, both emotionally in their environment, physically in their environment, cannot be underestimated. And as Denise has said, sometimes the small adjustments within both the home or school setting can make such a difference to how safe and understood the young person feels. And once those early building blocks are in place, it then builds that sense of belonging, that connection, that feeling of understood love and care, which then in turn allows capacity to then be used to build on self-esteem. What is working well? What reward systems do work? How can confidence be achieved with meaningful praise? And really looking at the self-esteem of the individual, which ultimately we're building towards a self-actualization, that personal growth of insight, problem solving, the real question of knowing what can one change and what can't change. And that's often a key question that we work through with young people, because some things can't be changed and it's about how to adapt to those, but other things, small changes, can make a significant difference. And our aim is to help young people and the adults around them to live a happy and fulfilling life and be aware of these areas and how important they are, providing that motivation and aspiration, but remembering that this all takes time. And sometimes it can feel like a long time is being spent on one area of this. But until that's secure, it can be difficult to move on to the next level. So don't underestimate each individual stage and go with the time and pace that the young person needs. Some young people come to us at a state of burnout. They're exhausted, they're shutting down because everything has got too much. And at that point, we're looking back at how can these individual needs and safety factors be put in place. Other young people we meet and we can see the signs of that. But that's when strategies can be put in place at an earlier stage to avoid that feeling of overwhelm and feeling out of control, increasing safety and security so their needs are truly met. Okay, next slide.
So as we've said, we work on building recommendations into our diagnosis. Those recommendations are broad and far-reaching and developmentally focused. We also work, as Helen says, and Catherine, on intervention, therapeutic intervention. Just to give you some examples of what we would do, just some practical examples, again, working on that individual basis. So lots of young people come to us and they are confused by social dynamic. They find social exposure both challenging and often exhausting. They can experience social vulnerability and certainly social confusion. We will work on social skills with them, and that is very far-reaching. So social skills in themselves can span a whole range of different topics. Friendships are very common, and we build the understanding of friendship with the young person by looking at their current friendships, how they see their friends, what role do they feel that they play within friendship. We look at friendship using tools like the circle of friendship, understanding that friendship is a fluid dynamic, that the circle of friendship can change. Often young people find it quite easy to put in the centre of that friendship circle probably all the friends that they have in the universe. They find it much more difficult to discern where friends should sit according to acquaintance, or are they people that are just in my classroom, or are they my very best friend who I've known since primary school and I've known them for 12 years and we have long-standing friendship. So we build on that understanding, we build that capacity for reflection by breaking down those values and characteristics that they have themselves as friends. What do they think they're good at? What do they bring to a friendship? And then able to use that knowledge to reflect on friends that they might want. Okay, so are there characteristics that their friends have, like trustworthiness or loyalty, that they like? And in building up that knowledge of, actually, these friends have this and these don't, or I see them here but I don't interact with them all the time, the young person's able to reflect and develop then a more robust friendship circle that really does reflect the position of their friends and those acquaintances around them, but also knowing that that can change over time with increased shared interest, with more time spent together. But building that knowledge of, who am I in a friend? What do I want from a friendship? Allows that young person to build identity. It allows them to understand and be safe within friendship, because they can almost use the checklist as a mechanical way of going, right, this person is, that person isn't. That might sound very rudimentary, but it's actually very, very useful as a starting point for many of the young people that I've worked with. It also reduces that risk of social vulnerability. We have occasions where some of our young people are really wanting to please their social group, and they think that they can do that in a way that means that they will expose themselves to unnecessary risk. So using tools like that, they're able to say, hold on, if this person's asking me for this or wants me to do that, is that a safe thing? Does that check in with what I now know I'm looking for in a friend? And that hopefully will give some strength to their understanding and their decision making. The other things are working on, as Helen said, that ability to know when it's okay to relax, when it's okay to take time out. Sometimes there's a fear with our young people as they develop that social ability and their desperate desire to be socially motivated, they then feel that they can't turn down any offer of any social interaction. That can leave them very fatigued and often exhausted. So building in that understanding that social exposure does lead to social fatigue, and it is totally fine to take time out. So using a model such as PNP, positive, negative, positive, working on building conversation that says things like, yes, I would absolutely love to come out with you. Here's the middle bit, the negative, but I've got a lecture tomorrow, I've got a class tomorrow and I can't quite make it. Here comes the positive again, but please ask me again and I would love to come the following week. So that's allowing the young person to know that they can decline things in that kind of positive sandwich approach that gives them that capacity to come back and say, I can't do it now because I'm absolutely exhausted, but I can do it next week and I really look forward to it. Other things we work on in social skills, of which there are many, but another example are conversations. Conversations are complex things. They have start points, they have end points, and they have middle bits full of content. So we work on, with a young person, how to start conversations using tools like pinching what somebody's asked you, for example, a very simple duplicit model where somebody might say, and what have you been doing this weekend? And you will answer, and then you just ping back, and what have you been doing this weekend? Because often our young people in the moment are challenged to think of new topical information to discuss. Also, the importance of listening in a conversation. Not always do you have to be the speaker. So giving our young people confidence to know that listening is really important, and then enhancing that listening capacity and building on non-verbal communication techniques that show them the other person that they are listening. So EAP being very important. Sometimes our young people can have quite pan expression, which makes it difficult for them to acknowledge that they're listening well. So building in EAP is a tool that I use, which is eye contact, affirmation and positioning. Eye contact, making good eye contact, usually around the ear to the shoulder if actual eye gaze is tricky. Affirmations, the nodding of the head, the umming and the ahhing and the leaning forward with the positioning, keeping that nice kind of positioning face onto an individual. We do these things with fun. We do them with role play. We look at real life situations, and they can very easily see when I'm turning my back and looking around the room, they absolutely know that I'm not listening. So building in that kind of easy, light touch into therapeutic interventions in very serious things like building conversational skills is very important. Emotions underpin much of the work that we do. As Helen said, unfortunately, we work with a lot of young people who are in crisis. So we build on their understanding of their emotions, the labelling correctly of those emotions, the first point of being able to express what that is by word, using techniques around them with families of validation and mirroring, so being able to mirror emotions within the home, building problem and solution thinking in order to generate more cognitive flexibility, looking at alternative mindsets. And the tools for that we use are things like the emotional cup, feelings, actions, consequence sheets. And the idea obviously is to promote that resilience, that emotional resilience and understanding of when they are emotionally getting to the top prior to overwhelm and what they do about it. So again, taking that very pragmatic approach. Overall, the impact of all these different types of intervention is that we're looking to build the capacity and the development of insight. We're looking at that young person being able to understand themselves better and have means and methods to express their needs. And we are aiming to build their cognitive flexibility and understanding that there are many options that they can take and tools that they can pick up or put down as they choose. Just so that they keep in mind that this, again, as we've said all along, is a developmental journey aimed for not just the immediate moment or the time of crisis, but building skills for their future and enabling them to think that they can take those future steps in tiny, tiny steps, keeping that anticipation and future thoughts. Next. Here's a case study of a young person with complex needs, actually had a diagnosis of autism and ADHD, but only a diagnosis, no recommendations, no infrastructure of support, no framework of support. Very, very able young person, achieving previously very high end in school, but very quickly developed feelings of overwhelm, accumulating anxiety, leading to self-harm, anxiety, and school refusal. This young person came to us in a crisis situation, both individually but also within the family setting. The young person also was exploring their identity and was transgender. But more importantly, for them, actually, we began by building that trusting relationship, worked on identifying their most pressing needs that they saw rather than what school saw or even parents saw, and worked very much on building that young person's understanding of self, using the tools or similar tools to the ones that I've mentioned, but more importantly, listening carefully and taking things in very, very small steps to make achievable goals between each intervention session that we worked on. There was a lot of liaison between the young person and their family. There was a lot of liaison between the family and the young person. And there was a lot of liaison between the young person, school, and the family. And this young person went on to go back to school, function really well, make good friendships, form a relationship, finish school, and now is at university studying psychology and counselling as a result of their own experiences in this process. Next.
I also wanted to draw attention to how very different each individual autistic profile can look, and just to think about how internalized that can be. Often in females, but not exclusively. I work with a number of young males who also have a very internalized profile. This can often be misinterpreted as a high level of anxiety, highly sensitive, and overwhelmed, and often misunderstood. And what we want to focus on is helping to build the identity and understanding of the young person, but also of the people around, helping to build that personal toolbox of strategies. helping to build the confidence, the resilience, the understanding, and retain that locus of control that's so important. So the diagnosis isn't missed, it's not interpreted as something else that's secondary, but we can see where this is coming from, looking at the neurodevelopmental journey that that young person has been on through a trusting relationship over time. We recognise that some young people present with a PDA profile. This is pathological demand avoidance. Again, this can be internalised or externalised. And this is where the anxiety related need for control can lead to young people resisting the everyday demands. But this can very much be misunderstood. It can be seen as naughty behaviour, and it can be dealt with in a way that can make the anxiety so much more significant because the young person feels misunderstood. So it's about the family and the school understanding each individual profile, looking at how to support anxiety, how to work together, how to manage the demands. As Denise said earlier, the importance of language demands and what that looks like, and how everybody around can adapt to help the young person to thrive, helping to build the personal toolkit and helping to feel truly understood. Thank you. So the personal toolbox that we have referenced several times throughout this, we just wanted to summarise as what this actually means, because people could be asking, what does that look like? And it's that sense of identity, the understanding of yourself, understanding of what the triggers might be and what can help you in that situation, how to positively reframe something, how to relax and decompress, where the physical release can come from. And all of these things are truly unique to each individual. And this forms part of the recommendations for home and school that will help the young person moving forwards. Next slide. And finally, advice for families. One of the things that we often find when families come to us is they had a feeling, they had an instinct, they felt that there might have been something, but it wasn't clear what. And it's important to listen to your instincts and seek some professional help. Just a conversation with somebody, just to listen, to validate, explore. If this isn't the right pathway, that's okay, but at least we've been able to listen and guide and signpost where might be the right place. Listening to the voice of the young person. So many of the young people we see come to us with their own questions about their identity, with their own questions where they are wondering if they are neurodiverse and what would help. Look at what could be underpinning and not just the behaviour that's presenting on the outside, and remembering that each individual is unique. So many people can feel, well, it can't be autism because they're able to do this or they're able to do that, or I know somebody who's autistic and they're very different. Well, that's exactly what we see. Everybody's unique. Make the connections between home and school. It might be a very different profile that's seen, but when you bring it together, it can be enlightening as to what that truly means. Don't be afraid or wait to share concerns. We don't want it to reach crisis point before people reach out to have that initial conversation. Focus on those positive relationships, increased empathy, even when behaviour is challenging at home or school. Often the young person, it's a sign of distress. It's a sign that they're not coping and they need more empathy at that point, with reduced demands, helping the young person to feel in control. And remember, as part of this, you're not on your own. Very much understand that there's lots of people in very similar situations and we want to work together to support moving forwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Denise and Helen, for giving us a comprehensive overview of how you work. It's really, really interesting to gain that insight and with those practical examples. If you would like more information, please contact us on the website www.roundwaycentre.org.uk, or there's the email address office@roundwaycentre.org.uk. And just to introduce you here in this picture, this is Kelly and Leanne, who are the administrators who receive contact from families and schools. Thank you again.